Hi, this is Dr. Christopher Perrin, and welcome to this episode of The Christopher Perrin Show. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about a crackling fire, getting close to hearth and home. It's winter here in central Pennsylvania, and we've had some snow, and it's been cold, very cold. And one of the things that my family really enjoys on a cold winter day is gathering around a fire. In fact, I have a couple of grandsons, aged like 7 and 4, and they like nothing better than to come over to my house and start a fire outside and, stoke and tend and care for the fire, and the bigger, the better. And we did that last week. But we also like gathering around the fire in a fireplace. And I'm sure you do too. There's something just so enjoyable about having a cup of hot chocolate around a campfire, or on a cold winter night, or a fire in a home. I'm sure you've done that and enjoyed that. And stories are told, hands are warmed at the fire, people gather around the fire. It's one of the things that fire just does. It attracts us, its warmth, its beauty, its brightness. Well, the Latin word for fire, for fireplace, there's ignis for fire, but there's the Latin word for fireplace or hearth is focus. Yes, the same word that we have in English, focus. When we gather around a fireplace, we naturally focus. We draw close to the fire and to one another. We find needed warmth not only from the fire, but from nearness, from conversation and fellowship. We focus not only on the fire, and who doesn't love gazing at the fire, but on each other. The fireplace, the fire itself, draws us in and draws us close. So it's a focal point in a home. And in ancient homes, when there wasn't propane gas to heat or electric baseboard heating, etc., the fireplace was very important indeed, not just for warmth, but for cooking. In an age of infinite possibility, however, we're currently drawn not so much inward around a focal point like a fireplace, but outward. We can even say that we're pulled outward by forces that are uncommonly powerful. Sure, we see the beginnings of commercial flights to space, and we marvel at the images of the cosmos that are sent to us from, say, the James Webb Telescope. I love looking at those. But we're also told that we can change and that we can become what we want, up to and including our gender. The Disney company has told us for many years not only to reach for the stars and follow our dreams, but to realize our dreams. Well, what should we be dreaming for? The Latin word for a course that we might take is tractus. We're on a path. We want to be on a path going somewhere that is attractive, do we not? In America, pollsters often ask Americans if we think the country is on the right track or on the wrong track. And the thing about tracks and roads and pathways is that they generally lead somewhere. Americans are quick to say we're on the wrong road, but without specifying in any clear way just where we want to go. We now know that we are distracted as ever, but we're not sure on what to focus. T.S. Eliot, the poet, said that we are distracted by distraction, and this remains true. But could he guess the myriads of ways that our distractions have multiplied? Could he have imagined the prospect of endless scrolling on a slick, glassy, handheld device? We're not only distracted, we are attracted. Attracted because that which distracts we find attractive enough to stay transfixed, looking at glitzy ephemera for hours. It's been observed many times that progress has reference to and is assessed by a destination. Perhaps C.S. Lewis put it best when he wrote this. Progress means getting nearer to the place you want to be. And if you've taken a wrong turn, then to go forward does not get you any nearer. If you're on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and walking back to the right road. And in that case, the man who turns back soonest is the most progressive man. Lewis leads us to consider another dimension to the question of our tract or our path. If we don't know where we want to go, should we retrace our steps? Could going backwards ever be the most progressive move? In 1947, Dorothy Sayers thought that going backwards was the best move to make in regards to education. In her speech at Oxford at that time, she noted a variety of contemporary problems with education that added up to the fact that most students did not know how to learn for themselves. And musing on a solution, she writes this. This is in her speech, published as an essay called The Lost Tools of Learning. She writes, "What then are we to do? We cannot go back to the Middle Ages. That is a cry to which we've been accustomed. We cannot go back. Or can we?" And then she uses this Latin word, distingua, which means I distinguish. I should like every term in that proposition defined. Does go back mean a retrogression in time or the revision of an error? The first is clearly impossible per se. In other words, none of us are going to be able to time travel. Sorry. The second is the thing which wise men do every day. Cannot. Does this mean that our behavior is determined by some irreversible cosmic mechanism, or merely that such an action would be very difficult in view of the opposition it would provoke? Meaning, we cannot go back to the Middle Ages, because if we went back to the Middle Ages, not by time traveling, but in some other sense, we would face a lot of opposition. Then she goes on. The Middle Ages. She wants to distinguish what that word means in the proposition. The proposition being we cannot go back to the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, obviously the 20th century, is not and cannot be the 14th. But if the Middle Ages is, in this context, simply a picturesque phrase denoting a particular educational theory, there seems to be no a priori reason why we should not go back to it, with modifications. As we have already gone back with modifications to, let us say, the idea of playing Shakespeare's plays as he wrote them, and not in the modernized versions of Cibber and Garrick, which once seemed to be the latest thing in theatrical progress. Let us amuse ourselves by imagining that such progressive retrogression is possible. So, I'm sure you catch her drift. She's saying that there's a way we can go back to any age if we're going back to ideas and practices that are evergreen and don't change, or that are always pertinent and relevant to human experience. So what were they doing back in the Middle Ages that might be still worth doing in the 21st century? Can we go back in that sense? And can we go back in the sense of revising an error, which we do all the time? We write a paper and we go back and read it, and we read it again, and we think differently about what we wrote, and we make a change, etc. In many ways, we're always reviewing, we're always revisiting, we're always, in that sense, going back. Reading, some have said, is rereading, and writing is rewriting. So yes, we go back. Sayers, in other words, suggests a way that we can get on track, the threefold track that leads to wisdom by means of mastering the verbal arts of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Should we get back on that path? Now, Sayers was speaking to educators, and I'm an educator, and I often write and talk about education. So as I'm thinking about focusing on hearth and home, I'm thinking about returning to family and home, but I'm now thinking about it through the lens of an educator. Do we go back? Do we focus on another way that we really return home as educators? By going back on the path of learning that is called the trivium. And this is what Dorothy Sayers argues for in her speech and essay. The trivium, which means a threefold path. The trivium is a set of verbal skills that enable a student to learn. That is, to be truly a student. because a student should be someone who is eager for learning and does learn. The word student comes from the Latin word studium, which means zeal, eagerness, or fondness for something. So to be a student is to have zeal for learning. And if one can learn for oneself, one can, over time, actually become wise. If Sayers is right, we can go back, not in the sense of nostalgic historical reenactment, but in the sense of revising an error or restoring a perennial human idea. I think that would be progress. When we look around and we see the remnants of a bygone age, is it really bygone? Or in what sense? If so, why is there still something remaining that we see, some remnant? Could it be that the past is not dead? Could it be that it's not even past? This I'm picking up from Faulkner in one of his novels. The past is never dead. It's not even past. We know that enduring architecture, for example, still beckons and speaks. Note the architecture, say, at an old medieval town like Oxford. Traditions continue to be passed down as humans cannot but receive what they love that others have given them and then embody them and then, in so doing, pass them down to the next generation. Witness the traditions at Christmas, perhaps in your own family or in our own culture that have been passed down, or the high table ceremonies at the various colleges at Oxford. Note even our language, English. Many people, preeminently our parents, took the time to point out countless objects to us and their corresponding words, thousands upon thousands of times until we mouthed the words ourselves, not knowing at the time that we were imbibing a confluence of Indo-European languages, including Latin, Greek, Anglo-Saxon, Sanskrit. We share this common aggregated language that we call English, and it gives us common text as well as a shared history such that English-speaking people from various countries still call each other cousins. In fact, any two people who share a common language, be it English, Italian, Spanish, French, German, Russian, or Hindi, also share a kind of kinship or fellowship. The language creates fellowship. Even to order a cappuccino in basic Italian, vorrei una cappuccino per favore. Even to order a cappuccino in basic Italian draws one closer to the Italian at the coffee bar. When you walk into an Italian coffee bar, note the bar. And before you dismiss it as impractical, find out why it is there. When the Italians speak about a bar, they're usually thinking about a coffee bar. Chesterton was wise enough to ask such questions. Why is it there? Those kinds of questions about all kinds of cultural artifacts, including something as mundane as a fence. Here's what he writes. There exists, in such a case, a certain institution or law, let us say for the sake of simplicity, a fence or gate erected across a road. The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and asks, I don't see the use of this. Let us clear it away. To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, if you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then, when you come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it. So, note what the use of that fence is first before you decide to clear it away. You can spend, or if you do spend some time at an Italian coffee bar, and if you haven't, I hope you soon will, you will discover soon the use of it. In the morning, Italians enjoy conversing with one another at the bar for a while before beginning their workday. They don't prefer finding a table, which creates an isolating space from other friends who come into the shop. They're typically greeting people, friends, as they're coming in, and they come to the bar and order, and everybody's talking. They rather enjoy standing up, and there are no stools, enabling them to easily mingle and talk to several people as they enter into the shop and order their coffee. I don't think they ever order coffee to go. They call that portatile. It's only Americans who ask for a to-go cup. Most shops don't even have paper to-go cups. The coffee shop workers standing across the bar also can join the repartee as they serve everyone at the bar. It's a delightful experience. If we follow Chesterton's experience or his advice and we go away and we think, we won't want to destroy the Italian coffee bar, but we will rather go there and order a cappuccino and probably start learning some Italian. Good institutions, good traditions are like an Italian coffee bar. They exist for a good reason, because good people created them and perpetuated them over time. Some good things can be replaced by even better ones, like paper replacing parchment, but some good ideas endure across time, like the idea of the family. We can go far back before the Middle Ages to find the family as an existing, venerable, and enduring institution. In Latin, the word familia could designate not only mother and father, but all their children and anyone else dwelling with them, including servants and in a Roman family, slaves, at least a patrician family. A Latin familia could therefore be a household. However else we might conceive the household, the family contained a husband and a wife who were expected to be a father and a mother and to have children. This is a perennial, simple, and great enduring idea, the family. The family is natural, and you know why? And it's necessary in order for not just the procreation of the human species, but for the development and maturity of the next generation. We human beings have a long gestation period, 9 months, and then it takes a long time, longer than any other species, until we are independent. So it's necessary for a mother and a father to be with a child to help that child grow to maturity. And across cultures and across time, this is what we've seen. Why the size of the family has varied and who's invited into the extended family has varied. A mother, a father, and their children have been persistent over time. This is the family. As natural and ubiquitous as the family is, the essential concept of the family is today being challenged and stretched to include virtually any collection of human beings who seek to live under one roof. But we should observe the family carefully, just as we observed the Italians at the coffee bar, or as Chesterton examined the fence or the gate across a road. How does a family behave? What is it for? What is its use? What does a good marriage look like? How do husband and wife collaborate and sometimes conspire? How do they raise their children, and how do they manage the inevitable suffering their children bring them along with unexpected and great joy? To turn to the family, we could travel to dozens of places and writers. We could look to Plato's arguments that children should be raised collectively and eugenically without parents even knowing which children are theirs, all in order to raise up the best guardian class that could serve the polis. We could look to Aristotle's arguments in favor of the nuclear family and a clear hierarchy for the purpose of teaching virtue that would contribute to the well-being and stability of the entire polis. Clearly, we could look to the Old and New Testaments that portray children created in the image of God and as gifts from God to their mother and father, and by extension, gifts to the entire church. In the Odyssey, we find perhaps the earliest writer that portrays a complicated and sophisticated family for us, a family that has captivated readers for thousands of years. It is in Homer's Odyssey that we encounter Odysseus, Penelope, and their son Telemachus, a family that enchants inspires, and surprises. Most surprising of all, this sophisticated, multidimensional family was described about 2,800 years ago. What did humans think and know about family life then, 2,800 years ago? In the Odyssey, Odysseus is seeking to return home after 10 years of battling the Trojans. The Greek word for home or homecoming is nostos, and a nostos can be a tale of homecoming or a quest to return home. That's what the word Odyssey has come to mean for us. In the Odyssey, we find Odysseus himself, as well as several other characters, often set before a fire and a table, conversing, eating, and drinking, while listening to historic tales sung forth in poetry by a bard, usually accompanied by a lyre. Odysseus, at one point, while recuperating at the table of King Alcinous in Phaeacia, he says this, "Alcinous, majesty shining among your island people, what a fine thing it is to listen to such a bard as we have here. The man sings like a god. The crown of life, I'd say. There's nothing better than when deep joy holds sway throughout the realm, and banqueters up and down the palace sit in ranks, enthralled to hear the bard, and before them all, the tables heaped with bread and meats, and drawing wine from a mixing bowl, that the steward, as the steward makes his rounds, and keeps the wine cups flowing. This, to my mind, is the best life can offer." So says Odysseus at a great banquet, listening to great music being played, poetry being sung, stories being told, eating fine bread meats, and drinking wine. In time, Odysseus hopes to return to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus on his island kingdom of Ithaca. For Odysseus, too, is a king, and he has a palace there, too, like Alcinous. But his palace is being ravaged by about 100 suitors who demand food and drink from his table while he's away, thinking that Odysseus, after some 20 years, is lost or dead and never coming home. The suitors also demand that Penelope marry one of them so that the island will once more have a king. During his 20 years away, his infant son, Telemachus, has now grown into a young man. But how can he hold back 100 suitors who are demanding to marry his mother and become his stepfather? Well, this is the essential plot of the Odyssey, the story of Odysseus, the man of many twists and turns, who very much wishes to return home. Might we want to do the same? So this episode introduces the theme of family, hearth, and home. And I hope to spend the next 2 or 3 episodes unpacking this great idea in this great tradition of the family. What is it? Why is it natural and necessary? And why is it also so productive and so blessed? I hope you'll join me in some future episodes when we'll explore this. I also want to remind you that you can hear more of my lectures at classicalu.com, and not just me, but some 100 other courses that are available there on classicalu.com. The first initial lectures are always free. It's a subscription site for those who want to know the classical tradition and especially be trained as classical teachers. So I encourage you to take a look at classicalu.com. And I want to thank you for your kind attention to this podcast. Thank you very much for either watching or listening. I'd like to thank you for watching or listening to the Christopher Perrin Show. And to do that, I can give you a coupon code that will give you 10% off on anything that you might care to order at classicalacademicpress.com. And the coupon code is simply CP Show. Thanks again for listening or watching.